Ode and Elegy. A thud, shrieks, frantic wing beats, having some strange sound of applause in them. The hawk seizes the neck of the blue jay it knocked into the grass, digs in its claws, presses its wings hard to the ground, and strikes the blue neck, scattering feathers. Then, as easily as a great wave in heavy seas lifts a tiny boat and throws it upside down, still afloat but keel up, so the hawk flips the jay and hops on top and attacks the throat. A blue wing wrests itself free, flaps like a flag, saying, "I will fight you." The hawk stuffs the wing back down into its place and with a talon holds it there while it strikes and strikes at the throat. The jay and hawk stare face to face, as close as Jesus and Judas at their kiss. The jay struggles to strike back, but its neck is broken. Terror stuffs the eyes of this lord of the woods, fields, backyards. We've all seen it, glide from a tree high on the hill to like one of the blue boat-shaped seaplanes Pan Am flew on its Pacific routes in its great days. To a tree lower down, pause, then swoop to the feeder, its wings a bit bent, propellers semi-invisibly whirling. The hawk strikes again until the jay's eyes become bits of taxidermist's glass. It treads the jay's body up and down, trampling the last life out of it. With one claw it seizes the throat, with the other the belly. Testing it gives a flap of wings. Then it adjusts its feet, flaps again. A yellow diamond-shaped mark appears on its forehead, possibly a mark that glows only in victory. Now it pushes off, clutching the body of the jay transversely, like a coffin hewn in the shape of the body of the dead, carrying its burden low to the ground while gaining speed. Just as in the takeoff à l'américaine of the Lafayette Escadrille, when the planes flew a long time a few feet above the field, then lifted their noses and soared, so the sharp-shinned hawk now pulls back on an inner joystick and carrying his blue load that glints blue in the sunlight, soars up over the tops of the Norway spruce and the tamaracks. There's a theory that one hears often, one hears from just everybody, but also from people like Rilke, that it doesn't matter what kind of life one has left behind, how many destroyed people have fallen, as long as you produce the great work. And so I was thinking about that dubious theory when I was reading a biography of Shelley. Shelley. When I was 20, the one true free spirit I had heard of was Shelley. Shelley, who wrote tracts advocating atheism, free love, the emancipation of women, the abolition of wealth and class, a gorgeous version of Plato's Symposium, and poems on the bliss and brevity of romantic love, and longer poems on the difficulties of love. Shelley, who, I learned later, perhaps almost too late, remarried Harriet, then pregnant with their second child, and a few months later ran off with Mary, already pregnant with their first bringing along Mary's stepsister Claire, who very likely also became his lover. And in this malaise à trois, which Shelley predicted would be a paradise of exiles, they made their life, along with the specters of Harriet, who drowned herself in the Serpentine, and of Mary's half-sister, Fanny, who killed herself, possibly for an unrequited fixation on Shelley, and with the spirits of adored but neglected children, conceived almost incidentally in the pursuit of Eros. Harriet's Iantha and Charles, denied to Shelley and sent out to foster parents. Mary's Clara, dead at 1, her Wilmouse dead at 3, Elena, the baby in Naples, almost surely Shelley's own, whom he adopted, then left behind, dead at 1.5, and Allegra, Claire's daughter by Byron, whom Byron packed off to the convent at Bagnacavallo at 4, dead at 5. And in those days, before I knew any of this, I thought I followed Shelley, who thought he was following radiant desire. Sex. On my hands are the odors of the knockout ether, either of above the earth, On my hands are the odors of the knockout ether, either of above the sky, where the bluebirds go to get blued on their upper surfaces, or down under the earth, where the immaculate night crawlers take in tubes of red earth and polish their insides. Insomniac. I open my eyes to see how the night is progressing. The clock glows green. The light of the last quarter moon shines up off the snow into our bedroom. Her portion of our oceanic duvet lies completely flat. The words of the shepherd in Tristan, "Waste and empty the sea, come to me. Where can she be?" Then in the furrow where the duvet overlaps her pillow, a lock of brown hair shows itself, her marker that she's here, asleep somewhere down in the dark underneath. Now she rotates herself a quarter turn from strewn all unfolded on her back to bunched in a Z on her side with her back to me. I squirm nearer, careful not to break into the immensity of her sleep, and lie absorbing the astounding quantity of heat a slender body ovens up around itself when need be. Her slow, purring, sometimes snorish, perfectly intelligible sleeping sounds abruptly stop. A leg darts back, hooks my ankle with its foot, and draws me closer. At once her sleeping sounds resume, telling me, "Come, press against me. Yes, that's it. Put your right elbow on my hip bone. Perfect. And your right hand at my breast. Yes, like that. Now your left arm, which has become extra, stow it somewhere out of the way. Good. Entwined in one another so, unsleeping one. Together we will outsleep the night." There's another poem of the childhood of my children. Though my son appears in the poem at age 36. It's called It All Comes Back. It's a birthday party. We placed the cake with its 4 candles poked into thick, soft frosting on the seat of his chair at the head of the table for just a moment while we unfolded and spread Spanish cloth over Vermont maple. Suddenly, he stepped from the group of kindergarten mates and parents and family friends and darted to the table, and just as someone cried, "No, no, don't sit," he sat right down on top of the cake, and the room broke into groans and guffaws. Actually, it was pretty funny. All of us were yelping our heads off, and actually it wasn't in the least funny. He ran to me, and I picked him up, but I was still laughing, and indignant fury, he hooked his thumbs into the corners of my mouth, grasped my cheeks, and yanked. He was so muscled and so outraged, I felt he might rip my whole face off. Then I realized that was exactly what he was trying to do. It came to me. I was one of his keepers. His birth and the birth of his sister had put me on earth a second time, with a duty, this time, to protect them and to help them to love themselves. And yet here I was, locked in solidarity with a bunch of adults against my own child, hee-hawing away, all of us, without once asking if we weren't underneath, all of us striking back too late at our own parents for humiliating us. I gulped down my laughter and held him and apologized and commiserated and explained, and then things were right again, but to this day it remains loose, this face, seat of superior smiles on the bones from that hard yanking. Shall I publish this story from the past and risk embarrassing him? I like it that he fought back, but what's the good? Now he's 36 of telling a tale of that mortification when he was so young. Let him decide. I'll give him 3 choices. He can scratch his slapdash check mark, which makes me think of the rakish hook of his old high school hockey stick, in whichever box applies. Tear it up. Don't publish it, but give me a copy. Okay, publish it on the chance that somewhere someone survives of all those said to die miserably every day for lack of the small clarifications sometimes found in poems. So this is called field notes, in the sense that bird watchers use the term, a little book to take note of birds they have noticed. So I wrote this sort of in honor of my wife, who is a great lover of birds, and who feeds who not feeds, but provides fluff to line the nests for the tree swallows every spring. Field notes. When we were out at dinner last night, I should say before I read this first stanza, I've never had a dinner like the one described. When we were out at dinner last night, a dim mood from the day hung on me that neither the Kinnell de Brochet nor the Domaine Etienne Sauzet Poligny Montrachet Les Combettes 2000 could quite lift. She disappeared and plucked out of the air somewhere an amusement or comfort, and quickly back laid it in our dinner talk. When it was time to leave, and she scanned the restaurant for the restroom, she went up on her toes like the upland plover. In the taxi home, we kissed a mint from the Maître D's desk from my mouth to hers like bohemian waxwings. When I squished in bare feet up to her bedroom, I found her already dropped off, her bedside lamp still on, Theodore Xenophon Barber's very reversible book, The Human Nature of Birds, lying opened face down under her chin. Gazing at her, I gradually understood that she was gazing back, having been sleeping awake as the tree swallows do. I went around the foot of the bed and climbed in and slid toward the side, lined with the softness of herself, and we clasped each other like no birds I have seen. Our cries that night were wild, unhinged, not from here, like the red-throated loons. Feathering. Yesterday she took from the closet that old lumpy tea-colored pillow, stained with drool, smelling of head sweats, night sweats, or what, that probably more than a few heads have waked upon over time in the dark and lain still with eyes open, wondering at the strangeness within themselves. She took it from the closet and ripped out the stitchings at one end, making it a sack. Now she stands on a bench in the garden, delves a hand into the pillow, and lifts out a puffy fistful of tiny feathers. When spilled bits drift toward the ground, tree swallows appear. She raises her arm holding the feathers straight up over her head and stands like a god of seed time about to scatter bits of plenitude, or like herself long ago at a pond in summer, chumming for sunfish with breadcrumbs. When the breeze quickens and she unlocks her fist a little and some of the fluffs tumble out, one of the swallows that now are looping and whirling about her snatches at a feather, misses it, twists round on itself and snaps its beak shut on it and soars over the field. After many tosses, misses, and catches, she ties off the pillow, ending for now the imperative to feather one's nest, which has come down in the tree swallow from the Pliocene. Through bird glasses, I've been watching this near intermingling out by the barn. Now, as she walks back to the house, could that be a wobble in her gait of a creature better suited to aerial life, who has not yet fully brought herself back from being where she has been? This is a poem called Middle Path. James Wright went to Kenyon College, and I know you all know who James Wright was. And he, and at Kenyon College, the main path through the center of the campus is called Middle Path. And that's the title of this poem that I wrote when I was out there once and saw this famous Middle Path. There's a quotation from Christopher Smart, the 18th century English poet, at the start of this poem. Let James rejoice with the scuttlefish who foils his foe by the effusion of his ink. This is In Memoriam, James Wright. Your feet lift one after one, as if levitating, and slide through the air and stamp down in the awkward gait of someone who has been wound up somewhere else, too tight, and set down here and pointed in a precarious direction, past fallen trees that hold up their root systems for psychiatric inspection, singers who reveal the pink of their tonsils, cash registers that cry, Treblinka, when the cash drawer pops open. Dogs who hoist a leg and drizzle. Beggarmen eager to tell their life stories. Bowing wings that split open their trailing edges and show their gears when starting to land. Everything found a way to show you its insides on Middle Path, under a brilliant sky, where, young, you walked a fire in the faith that it could be done. But if finding speech that can express trouble takes going into hell, afraid in the fear it cannot be done for long. You, of all of us, were to be able to sit down forever, almost without self, with pencil and notebook, wherever death and life meet, with second sight, and see the world we love falling apart. Today, this first day of spring, I can see you straying off Middle Path, lifting your feet high to stomp through the last sooted remains of snow and slip into the little graveyard that stands to the side and hunker down at a grave marker and touch the chiselings that time and the chemical rains have spared. Alfred and effaced, age 6, age 4, children of effaced and Elizabeth effaced. Of such is the kingdom of effaced. Now I think I'm going to read one more poem, and I'm going to let you rest a moment before I find it. Here it is, Why Regret? Which has a second page somewhere. Here it is, called Why Regret? Don't you like the way the ants help the peony globes open by eating the glue off? Weren't you cheered to see the ironworkers sitting on an I-beam dangling from a cable in a row like starlings, eating lunch, maybe bologna on white with fluorescent mustard? Wasn't it a revelation to waggle from the estuary all the way up the river, the Kill, the Pearl, the Run, the Rent, the Beck, the Sight, the Syke still flowing to the shock of a spring? Didn't you almost shiver hearing book lice clicking their sexual dissonance inside an old Webster's New International, perhaps having just eaten out of it Izzle, Yister, and Thalassacon? What did you imagine lies in wait anyway at the end of a world whose substance is glame, gleet, birdlime, slime, mucus, muck? Don't worry about becoming emaciated. Think of the wren and how little flesh is needed to make a song. Didn't it seem somehow familiar when the nymph split open and the mayfly struggled free and flew and perched, and then her own back broke open, and the imago, the true adult, somersaulted out and took flight, seeking the swarm, mouth parts vestigial, alimentary canal incapable of digestion, a day or hour left to find the desired one? Or when Casanova took up the platter of linguine in squid's ink and slid the black batch out the window, telling his startled companion, the perfect lover does not eat. As a child, didn't you find it calming to imagine pinworms as some kind of tiny batons giving cadence to the squeezes and releases around the downward march of debris? Didn't you glimpse what seemed your own inner blazonry in the monarchs, flapping and gliding in desire in the middle air? Weren't you reassured To think these flimsy, hinged beings could navigate their way to Mexico by the flare of the bodies of ancestors who fell in this same migration a year ago. Whatever life you might have foregone in your sleep, could any have been happier than waking in the dark and finding you and your beloved are holding hands in your sleep? Thank you.